The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of The Chosen, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this new streaming TV show. And joining me today on the panel are Mike Denz. Hi, Mike.
Hi, everybody.
And Joanne Mercier. Hello, Joanne.
Hello, hello.
Folks, if you have not yet done so, I recommend that you subscribe to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should also make sure to hit the bell to get notifications. So we're talking about this phenomenon, this new thing that has kind of hit in the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020, and kind of in the first half of this year, called The Chosen. It is a streaming TV series that's planned to be a multi-season show about the life and ministry of Jesus. And it's kind of a phenomenon in several different ways, both in behind the scenes and in how it presents Jesus. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before. And so we're going to talk about the first season. It's an 8-episode first season that kind of covers the beginning of Jesus's ministry, the first part of it, some of the major highlights of it, the gathering of the apostles. Really, it's the gathering of the apostles that happens here, and we're going to talk about the different aspects of it. But I want to start out by first just asking your first impressions overall, like with just at the 30,000-foot level. I'll let you go second, Mike, because I know you're the one who brought this idea to me to do this show. So I'll give you the last word on first impressions. But Joanne, what was your overall impression on this?
Well, at first I wasn't sure what to. I can be a little bit of a skeptic when it comes to dramatizations of the Bible, the life of Jesus. So I kind of go into it with, okay, what angle do they want to take this time?
Mm-hmm.
And are we going to use biblical, is Jesus only going to speak the words from the Bible? Is he going to talk other ways? How are they going to depict everybody? And the first episode, I have to admit, I kind of sat there and said, there are 7 more of these I have to look at, huh? But it drew me in. And that's what I was surprised about. It actually drew me in. I have issues with some things from many different perspectives, especially since I'm someone who does faith formation right now for a living and how to present such things to others. But I have to say, it drew me in, and it was the personalizations, how each of the characters, you really got to know who they were as a person at that time. That really made a difference. So I'm pleasant question, quote unquote, quotation marks, question marks, pleasantly surprised, I guess.
Mike, I am going to give you the last word, so I'll give my overall impression first, which is I was also skeptical going in. I'm usually very skeptical of quote unquote Christian movies. Now I love biblical epics, the swords and sandals sort of things, Ben-Hur, and I love the Passion of the Christ. This is not like any of those. It really isn't. And as I came into it, I was, like I said, I was skeptical. But as and the first episode was hard because, and I'll explain why it was hard as we get into it. But once we got into it, and especially from the end of the first episode and then each subsequent episode, I'll be honest here, I'm Sicilian, so I'm kind of emotional. I cried every episode at least once because there were touching moments that just really, I don't know, there's something, it hit me in the right place that made me connect what I was seeing on the screen with the teaching of Jesus, especially the teaching of mercy and love. And that's what really drew me in. So that's my 50,000 foot level impression. Mike, I'll let you go next on your first impression.
Yeah, I'm at about 47,000 feet. My first overall impression, I actually saw, and I think they released this close to, I don't remember how close to Christmas this was, but, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but they had a pre-episode called The Shepherd, where they, from the point of view of the shepherds, and this will make more sense to, I mean, I'm assuming everyone's watched it, but you understand the different kind of perspectives that they're giving us that are unlike other biblical movies they're getting, and they did that on purpose. So the whole story is told from the perspective of the shepherds, and I was really impressed with that. Of course, I love Christmas, so that helped.
Yes.
As I watched the episodes we're talking about today, episodes 1 through 8, which deal with, the part of the Bible that happens after Jesus is fully grown, I was like you guys. What are they going to do? What are they doing? I have a master's degree from Franciscan University. Dom and I are probably both approaching this from that skeptical, what are these evangelicals going to do here? Let's see what they're, is this going to be cheaply done? And they're just figuring people will go because they're Christian. And I was drawn in. I watched the first few. I told my wife about them. And it did draw me in. It did make me think. I just liked the way they were doing certain characters. They really resonated in a way that I didn't think would. And we'll talk about that. I just didn't think it would work the way they were doing it, and it really did. And then as we'll talk about it with the presentation, they did a big Easter Holy Week YouTube thing where they released them all. It was brilliant. And somehow they managed to make it during a pandemic, so everyone was home looking for stuff to watch, which really was like, God's like, we're going to get this thing watched, but I'm going to have a pandemic, so nobody has anything to do. So that all kind of snowballed, and our fellow Stubby / co-workers in the vineyard, so to speak, started popping up, saying, has anyone seen The Chosen? This is really, this is good. And evangelization started to be a common theme. I kept on hearing about it. This is really good evangelization, this series.
It's one of the things that makes this interesting is that it's completely outside the studio system. This doesn't go through, it's not on Netflix or Amazon Prime. It's crowdfunded, completely crowdfunded. They raised $10 million for the first season, and it's a sort of a unique model where now if you watch it, you can only watch it on an app. So on your iPad or whatever, you can stream it to Chromecast or to Apple TV, which is how I watch it, or Roku, or all these other ways, or just watch it on your phone or your pad. And so there's that. But when you watch it, they offer go ahead and watch it for free, but you could pay it forward. So make it like you're watching it for free because someone else, gave money, made a donation for this. And so that paid it forward for you. And you can, if you wish, pay it forward to someone else. And then once you've done that, then you start getting notification. These people all got to watch it because you gave. I think it's a brilliant funding model, frankly. And they funded the whole first season up front. And then they've got the four of the next season's episodes. So episodes 1 through 4 already funded. They're working on the 5th episode. They're planning 7 8-episode seasons to cover the 3 years of the ministry of Christ. So it should be interesting. So it's an interesting model that they've chosen, so to speak. And
no pun intended.
No pun intended.
Of course.
And so I thought that was fascinating, just the way that they decided to produce this.
Yeah, watching it through an app, I think, is genius. Because everybody has a streaming device on them, whether it's a phone or a tablet. You can watch it on your computer, but it's a whole totally different experience. And I think you have to, I have a feeling you have to have actually donated to unlock it on a computer.
Yeah.
But it seems like they want it in your pocket, or they want it on your person.
Right.
Sort of like a Bible. for example. It's sort of
Yep.
like scripture. So I think I agree with you. I think that is very genius.
You can also buy a DVD, like you can, or a Blu-ray. You can buy a physical disc from them too, which is because why not? But I think you're right. They primarily want it to be a streaming experience that people can have on their personal. I mean, it's an app on my phone. It's not even a website you have to go to stream. So it is really smart.
And it is still available on YouTube.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so you can do a search for The Chosen and find it there.
Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about the production values of the show. It was some pretty good production values. I liken it to a syndicated TV show. You know what I mean? So not like network TV, but like one of these syndicated, like something like a USA channel. I might be dating myself because I don't watch a lot of cable TV now, but like a pretty good cable TV show.
TBS or TNT or something.
Yeah. So not quite like the Vikings on History Channel, which is really like they spend a lot of money on each episode. This is more. You can tell the costs are a little lower, but it still looks good. It's not a bunch of people wearing bathrobes on set.
No, I thought that the only thing I would say there is they got to dingy up their Romans a little bit.
Yes.
The Roman guys walking around looked like they not quite, but almost like could be in a play or something. They just look too clean. I mean, these guys, they should be dirty too. But other than that, every other thing, right there with Jesus of Nazareth, as far as the sets and the people. Authentic looking Middle Eastern people playing, I mean, it all worked, very well. So you didn't have to suspend, your belief a little bit and say, okay, I'll just work with this. They got all these blue-eyed people playing Jews. Okay, that worked. It wasn't like that. It was done,
Or Max von Sydow
well.
in Jesus of Nazareth, with the blue eyes.
Yeah, the blue eyes never blinks. I'm like, that doesn't work. He looked a lot like Jesus, except for that. If they just would have given him if they would have had a way to get rid of that, if it would have been CGI back then.
So one of the things I wanted to mention in regard to this is there are some anachronisms. So it's like a TV, like it's kind of like Hercules, Xena, when they did these period shows where they were kind of wearing leather and had swords and horses and things. But every once in a while you saw a detail that said, this is a costume that they're wearing. And so like one of the things I immediately saw was like the sandals, for example. Like I think there was one scene where Matthew was putting on his sandals and there's a buckle on the sandal. I'm like, they didn't have buckles 2,000 years ago in the Holy Land. Now this I'd have to look up, but Matthew also has a lock and key that he uses to lock his house. And I'm not sure they had a lock and key system back then in the Holy Land. So there's some things like that, but my point there is there are elements of it that make it feel a little contemporary. Whether it's the things like costuming or parts of the set, or even the way they speak. Like, Mike, you had an example like of some of the language that feels very modern. It's not like lots of these and thous and dost thou, like the pretending to be old speak.
Right. They're not using like the High Queen's English to try to make it sound like they're being really proper or anything. And at first, especially like, we were talking about how we're coming at this from academics or from a teaching standpoint. Don't look for them to be quoting an approved Bible. They're
right.
That's not, don't look for that. What they're attempting to do, and they do very well, and it took me a while to get used to it, is be relatable.
Yes.
As if we were able to put what the apostles and Jesus would say through some sort of translator that would make it come out sounding like 2020 English in America, that's how it would come out.
Right.
So we can understand it. When, maybe they would use different kind of analogies and stuff. And some of those analogies we spend Bible studies explaining. Well, they all knew about sheep, so that's why they're using sheep. We're not have a lot of shepherds here in Buffalo or in Boston, but then they did. So let's talk about and learn about shepherds. Here the one that I mentioned earlier before we started the show was Jesus was walking, and they were arguing with him about going through Samaria, and like, this isn't a good idea. And he kind of stopped them and played the "I'm Jesus" authority card and said, if we're going to have a question and answer session every time we take a trip, it's going to be really annoying. And there's no way you would ever see question and answer session in the Bible. They wouldn't have that phrase there,
right.
But we all get that because we do Q&A. I mean, he could have said Q&A.
Yeah.
He was that close. And there's tons of catchphrases and just different things that are used that you're like, they wouldn't have had that back then, but this makes them real. They don't look fake. They don't seem so different that we can't relate. They're very real.
Well, what they're doing, I think, is doing what the early gospel writers did. They are interpreting what they've seen and understood of Jesus into whoever the audience is.
Right.
Okay, so I had to really clue into that by the second episode, or I wouldn't have continued watching it. So I had to say, okay, they're using exactly what the gospel writers would have done. This is my audience. This is how I need to explain all of this to them.
Right. Matthew was writing, the Gospel of Matthew was writing toward a Hebrew audience. And so he wrote in Hebrew ways. John was writing to a more Greek audience. Luke. Sorry. First, I knew that was wrong. The ghost of Scott Hahn was whacking me in the back of the head. So he was writing to a more Greek or Roman audience, actually more of a Roman audience. And so he wrote in that sort of way. And so they each one wrote in a way that the intended audience, and that's a good point, that they're really bringing, it's not that they're saying things like, there's an app for that. Like something that totally jars you out of it. But, given the time, the place, the people, like I'm kind of certain that weddings weren't really like they didn't have caterers. I don't know. I'm not really up on first century wedding practice that
wedding
much.
Planning.
Yeah. But I'm going to guess that it wasn't exactly like that, but it was close enough to what the Bible said that it really brought the important things across. And so I like that. I was okay with the anachronistic stuff because it really brought it home. It really opened up the gospel in a way that made it, there's that word again, relatable,
Yeah, and that's where the evangelization thing comes in. And it obviously had to be on purpose, whether it was a real intention of the producers or it was the Holy Spirit, which I think in many ways you can clearly see working through what they were doing, that we want to reach people that may be meeting Jesus and the apostles for the first time in any significant way.
Right.
And you can play these and say, well, if you want to know what Jesus is about, if you want to get an idea of why I'm so high on Jesus, watch this series and let me know what you think. And you could tell just about anybody, and they could have little understanding of Christianity and watch that and say, this is intriguing. I want to know more about him.
So let's talk about Jesus then in this, played by Jonathan Rumi. And he's a Jesus, again, unlike any other screen Jesus I've seen. As I mentioned, Maximus Shadow was this ethereal, above the earth Jesus. Who
never
Jesus,
blinked, yeah.
Yeah. The Jesus of the Passion, played by
Jim Caviezel.
Jim Caviezel, thank you. It was more down to earth, but still somewhat separate because, well, he didn't speak English at all in the movie, but also because he was undergoing the trial of the Passion. But there was that one scene where he was with Mary, where we had that flashback scene where he was with Mary and he was making the thing, and that Jesus was a little like this Jesus of the Chosen. But now we have the Jesus of the Chosen, and he's different. He's so different. When he was with the kids, that episode where before he meets the apostles, where the kids are coming to see him every day and hang out with him. And you're like, oh, that's kind of creepy. A guy hanging out with kids. Wait a minute. No, it's not. There's nothing creepy about this because it's Jesus. And he just is perfect with them, obviously. What do you think about what that makes this Jesus so different?
One of the things that is fantastic that he is this actor who's Catholic, who's a very devout Catholic, by the way, which you can follow him on Facebook and pray the Liturgy of the Hours with Jesus. It's really surreal because he does that stuff on his channel. But anyway, he is able to be the humanity of Jesus that you think might, you can imagine, like is very believable, and at the same time come across with the authority and the divinity comes across. He's able to get that in certain aspects. The whole conversation with Nicodemus, when they were, where they took that John 3 and just blew it up into a very interesting interpretation of that conversation. And Nicodemus was basically like, I'm in front of God and worshiping. He was just blown away. And Jesus didn't back away from, oh, no. He didn't want him to, he wanted him to come right up to him, but he wasn't saying you shouldn't act that way with me. And he owned his divinity in a way that had to come through in this actor's ability, and I think he did it.
I was going to say I'd have to agree with that. He's not the, I almost want to say he's not the cookie cutter Jesus.
Sure.
Of some of the, even some of the stuff that I use for faith formation when they have actors portraying Jesus. He's not the cookie cutter Jesus who's kind of walking saying, I'm in human form, but I know I'm divine.
Right.
He's sort of embraced both halves and uses it when he needs to. Right now, I think in the first season, we're seeing the humanity in him. I have a feeling that's going to switch as we get a little further into the gospel and a little further into the passion story. That's going to change up.
Yes.
But I'm dying to see him do Gethsemane, folks. I mean, that to me, I'm waiting for that now.
We got a little taste of it with the children's scene when he spent so much time praying and he was making things, and he knew his life was changing as he was going into public ministry. You could see his praying and listening to his father. I want to mention one other thing about how this actor does this. And I remember seeing it in a preview and then seeing it in the actual episode. And I don't remember which number, but it's the one where he calls Peter from the boat and he causes the big fish catch.
Yes.
That just blows Peter away. And it's so subtle and so simple, but he just does a head tilt. that is kind of like just says like, yep, I know, it's pretty cool, aren't I? It was just perfect. It was so human. It was such a human kind of like, and he was smiling like, I know,
it's the joy that he feels at giving Peter this thing that he knows Peter's you're gonna flip out when I do this for you, and I'm so excited to do this for you.
And he did it, and it's like, and now you can relate to when Jesus does those things for you. Like that's Jesus going, this is what, if you just pay attention and trust me, these are the kind of things that it kept. And Peter trusted to let him into the boat, and then he did that for him. It was an awesome scene.
So one of the things I wanted to say about this is that most times when you see Jesus depicted on screen is either way in the divinity side, like I keep mentioning about Max von Sydow, or way too much on the human side, and you hardly know he's divine at all.
There's that Jeremy Sisko one that they did not too long ago where it was like, oh my gosh, that was horrible.
Right.
He was to the point of being confused and not sure of himself at times. This is the most balanced Jesus I think I've ever seen on screen. This is the perfect balance between the humanity and the divinity, and you don't feel like there's a division or a conflict between them either. It's integrated, and I credit that to the actor and to the writing and to the director. I think it just works so well. I don't think another actor might have done as well with this as Jonathan Rumi does. It's perfect as it is. You think of and this is a weird analogy. You'll know why I'm doing it, because it's Star Wars. But when you saw Hayden Christensen struggle with playing Anakin, I'm going to be evil. I'm supposed to be good now, and it turned into just I'm neither. I'm just stale.
Right.
I'm hoping he's a better actor than that, but that's just how And it's almost like, for whatever reason, it's not easy to play Jesus. Let's just, You know,
No.
you got two wills and two natures. Yeah. So it's, and it doesn't seem like it's effort for this actor. He doesn't seem like, you know, and I think that I'm not going to say, oh, it's because he's Catholic, but I mean, here's a guy who goes to communion. Here's a guy who obviously has a relationship with Christ, and that is informing and in coming out in his acting. I believe personally that that's what he's doing.
So we got a lot to cover. We could spend a lot of time talking about.
We could spend a lot of time on Jesus.
Yeah, we don't spend too much time talking about Jesus. No, I'm just kidding. Because the rest of this is going to be about Jesus too. And I want to talk about the first episode and Mary Magdalene. And the first episode almost lost me. I have to be honest. It was a risky move they took because Jesus isn't in it until the very end. It's all about Mary Magdalene and how she was before she met Jesus. And Nicodemus. It introduces Nicodemus, who is an amazing both character and the actor who plays him. We'll talk about him in a second. But Mary Magdalene then has this conversion moment, this healing that she receives from Jesus. And then through the rest of the season is right there with the apostles. She is, she's literally like his right-hand woman in, next to him. She and that is biblical. The women traveled with the apostles and Jesus, and so I assume we'll be seeing more women joining them over time. But and I like that we're getting that depiction here that she plays a key role in as a disciple here in this. So, but that first episode was pretty amazing, and to see that conversion for her, they didn't overdo her sinfulness. There's sometimes you could see filmmakers and actors can sometimes revel a little too much in her former bad ways. They didn't overdo that. They didn't spend too much time on it. And her conversion is beautiful. It's really amazing.
I'm going to play the woman card here for a little bit, only because I think it's relevant that the first disciple that they actually show is a woman.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have to roll with that because I'm seeing as they develop the women characters are getting Jesus. They're understanding him. In fact, they're even asking him questions, which I'm not sure would be applicable in first century Judea, but they're getting his message. And it's the men around him who are, just as they've been depicted throughout the Bible, is not quite sure we're quite there. And they've got to be, especially Peter, who we're going to get to. But for them to use her first to show how most Christians of that time came to know Jesus, it was a conversion moment. And I think it still rings true today, even though some of us are, baptized as infants. There's come some moment in our lives when we have to have that sort of a conversion, subtly or overt. And I think to show that as the very first thing was genius. I have to admit.
Yeah, I like risky and then genius. It worked, and another bad analogy. It reminds me of they didn't mean to do it, but with Jaws, you didn't see the shark right away. Like, this is about a shark. Where is he? And you don't see Jesus right away. And it works because there's that anticipation. And what they did was, from Nicodemus's point of view, there was before and after. He didn't see the conversion, but he saw the difference, and other people saw the difference. The other guy that reported to Nicodemus didn't even talk to Mary. He just saw her and clearly saw, this is a different person. I got to go tell him. So you get what happens when you encounter Jesus. You get someone who was down and out. That bartender that they had as someone that she played off of and met was great. I loved the little back and forth they had. And she was at the end of her rope. She just showed it that way. And they didn't go out, for the unbiblical prostitute narrative. There might have been some hints of that, but it really was more about the one thing we do know for sure about her former life. She was possessed by 7 demons. Right. Or and that was great.
And I love the fact that she was known by a different name And then when she converted, she reverted back to her real name,
which Jesus called her by.
Right.
Yes.
And so I thought that was perfect.
Which kind of recalls a religious life, like where she's entered into religious life in a sense with Jesus, following him. That she's like Sister Mary, you might say.
Yeah, I don't want to say she's a mother figure to the apostles because of her age, but she is kind of like that sisterly, womanly, as you were saying earlier, that feminine presence that helps them.
Yes.
To see things the way that can be helpful, and that she has that relationship, and Jesus can take her off to the side and she helps bring him Nicodemus. I mean, it was great the way they imagined how she might be in that group.
Mm.
Let's talk about Nicodemus, played by Eric Avari, who, if you've ever watched any genre TV, he's been in Stargate and Star Trek and everything. He always he's a great character actor. He's never a lead actor. He is so great in this as Nicodemus. And in case you don't know who Nicodemus is, if you haven't watched it yet, he was a Pharisee, and at the crucifixion, he was the one who came, and stood up for Jesus. Wasn't he the one that stood for Jesus along with Joseph of Arimathea, who came to take the body? Like, there were the two Pharisees who were followers of Jesus, and so he is well respected. He's a big man in the Pharisee community, and a teacher, and he starts to really, like, against all odds, against the expectations of the right kind of Pharisee, ends up becoming so enamored of Jesus that right to the very end, and this is a bit of a spoiler, Joanne, so because I know you haven't seen this part yet, but right to the very end, he's almost becomes one of the apostles. He almost goes off from Capernaum with the apostles and Mary Magdalene and into the itinerant life, and he leaves behind all of his wife, his family, his position, his reputation. He almost did that, but at the last minute couldn't, and you could see it tore him up inside.
Yeah, I am so identifying with Nicodemus right now.
Yeah,
it be for many, many different reasons. That character is really speaking to me at the moment. So I could actually see that. I love the portrayal, but even in the Gospels, he is portrayed as one who comes to Jesus at night, in the shadows, to try to learn from him. So you've got the predisposition. The Gospel does tell us that, but it's the old way versus the new way. Nicodemus is a caretaker of the old way of the Jewish tradition. Yet because of that, he believes in the prophecy. So he knows the prophecy has to become fulfilled. He has not been tricked like some of the others into believing that, the old way is going to perpetuate itself. See where some of you might know where I'm going with this. I won't say it overtly, but I think our church is also at that point in time where things are happening now, especially with the way life is going. And I see in Nicodemus that tension of wanting to stay with the old way, yet knows that this is the fulfillment. Jesus is the fulfillment of the new way, and he is just being drawn to him like a fly to the light.
Right. I think with Nicodemus, it's because he shows with his interaction with the other Pharisees how the Pharisees have kind of elevated their own traditions, their own ways of doing things over and above the word of God. I think at one point, one of the Pharisees says to him that the Pharisaical law is God. Like, he literally comes out and says it. And I think that, like, Nicodemus is like, don't tell anyone that you're my student anymore. Like, basically, like, don't go around talking like that and telling people that I taught you. And I think he's seeing that. Yeah, like you say, he's beginning to separate from, what is man-made versus what is of God. And it's like the scales are falling from his eyes. And you see this journey he takes through this season, these 8 episodes that he takes, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he's going from here, in the future. I mean, obviously we know where he ends up in the Bible, but I want to see that journey that takes him to that destination.
Yeah, Nicodemus is in it for the long. He's playing the long game. In other words, he doesn't. Jesus doesn't get him right away, but God is patient, and Nicodemus will come around, and we know he does with, at the end with the burial, and he's part of that. And Nicodemus is one of John's. John teaches us about Nicodemus. I don't know if he's in the other Gospels. I don't remember him. And the two things are when he comes to him at night in the third chapter. And that's the famous 3:16, that's said to Nicodemus, John 3:16. And then he's at the end with the crucifixion. But one of the things about Nicodemus that makes him very unique is you have to look at what John's gospel is constantly showing us, where Jesus is saying, some of you get it and you recognize who I am. I'm the one you've been worshiping all along in the Old Testament. You see me, my miracles, my teaching. And then there's those who really should know, ones like Nicodemus, like Pharisees, who should recognize God when he's in front of you and you don't. And you could see the frustration or the Jesus wasn't happy with them and he didn't have much patience for, I can see your heart and I know why this is. And Nicodemus comes to him and says, obviously you come from God. This is basically his opening statements in the third chapter of John. We can tell no one does what you do and isn't from God. So he's already overcome what his fellow Pharisees just struggled with the whole time. But he's not able to give up all the trappings of his life just yet.
Right.
He's kind of like St. Augustine, Lord, help me follow you, but not yet.
Make me holy, but not yet. I do like when Nicodemus encounters John the Baptist. John has been arrested. And there's this interesting scene where John is disreputable. He is like the wild man of the desert, and he's got very little use for Nicodemus and the Pharisees. But there's this interesting exchange between them that really, again, advances Nicodemus and makes him think, makes him question, makes him wonder what's going on here. There's something big afoot. And I need to get to the bottom of it because he is an honest man, and he is a God-loving, God-fearing man, and that's what draws him in and drives him.
He's willing to search for the truth, and John doesn't trust him right away. And you can see in that conversation when you watch that episode that suddenly I don't remember what it was, but the penny drops for John, and he's like, "Wait a minute, this guy does get it."
Yeah, and
then he tells him things that he didn't think he was ready to hear when he first came to him.
So let's move on to talk about the first of the apostles, not the one you'd think. I want to talk about Matthew first, because I find him probably the most fascinating character that they've developed, because Matthew is a tax collector, and you kind of say, what kind of Jew would work with the Romans and become a tax collector? Well, Matthew, as they depict him here, is on the spectrum. Asperger's, autistic even, which 2,000 years ago would just be weird. They wouldn't be able to say that's a personality quirk or whatever. But he's obviously played to be really socially awkward, doesn't get social cues. He's really good with math. He prefers numbers over people and all these sorts of things. He's been alienated from his family because at one point he talks about how, well, I became a tax collector because I'm really good with numbers and they needed someone to do that. And that was natural for me. So why shouldn't I do that? Like, he doesn't get the social political ramifications of working for the Romans and with their onerous taxes. And you see he sees Jesus and he's trying to calculate Jesus. He's trying to figure him out. He's trying to develop an algorithm that explains what can't be explained. And at first he's doing it on behalf of the Romans, but eventually he kind of ditches the Romans and follows Jesus. And the Romans are like, what? you can't quit. No one quits the Romans. But I really came to really enjoy seeing this character because it represents part of the wide range of personalities, the many kinds of people. I know Christians like Matthew, frankly. I've met many of them, and there are a lot of them because I think Jesus attracts certain kinds of personality types, and this is one of the ones that he attracts. What did you guys think of Matthew?
The character of Matthew, as well as Peter, the other apostles you haven't gotten into their personalities quite as much. A little bit of Thomas, a little bit of Andrew, but Matthew and Peter are the big ones, and this is where you get the title of the series, The Chosen. A conscious decision by the producers to make this through the eyes of the apostles, and we're going to give them personalities. So there's more than just Matthew the tax collector. He wrote a gospel, and that's really all we know. We're going to give them personalities that could be true. No one says it's not true. And since Matthew was a tax collector, you could imagine this might have been him. And at the very least, it helps us develop an idea. One of the best parts about Matthew's early scenes is he has a caretaker Roman guy that's with him, and Matthew wants to talk to the head honcho of the Romans. I forget his name.
The praetor.
Quintus, thank you.
Yeah.
Quintus.
And Matthew is not afraid at all. His Roman escort is terrified. Like, he does not want to even go in with Matthew when he first goes to talk to him, but then he does. Matthew, it's like he's in front of a fire-breathing dragon, and he just doesn't really care, and he just wants to explain something. And it's like, this guy can have you killed anytime he wants. And Matthew's like, well, actually, you need me. I can help you with this, and is very audacious in the way he approaches it. So his character is at the same time funny, almost like the Sheldon Cooper character, who was also on purpose played with Asperger kind of quirks, but gave him a personality that you could get inside his head and kind of see what was going on. And the thing that happened for him is he was spying on Peter for the Romans and ended up seeing Jesus perform the miracle where Peter caught all the fish, and that didn't compute. That was like for Matthew, that I can't do an algorithm for that. And that's what really drew him in. Like, so there's something more. And it's like it awokened some sort of stirrings in him that he never were part of his modus operandi before. And, and then Jesus calls him. And that was like awesome.
I think Matthew is the epitome of the chosen, because we know as Christians that Jesus did not come for just the Jews, that Jesus came for everyone. So what this particular production is doing is giving you everyone, every different quirk, every different type of person, every different nuance. And he is that part of the vulnerable in our society that, even though he is important because he can compute things for the Romans, and Quintus thinks he's a cute little thing, you're just enjoyable. I'm not going to kill you because you make me laugh.
Right.
It shows you that Jesus comes for everyone, that everyone matters, that everyone figures into his kingdom. So playing them all like that. And I was totally amazed that they would make a character be on the spectrum and put him as an apostle. I was just like, wow.
Not just any character, but like Saint Matthew,
right?
One
like
of the apostles we know a lot about.
The gospel.
He wrote a gospel. He's the tax collector. We know about him, and it also sets him up to have a great dynamic with the other apostles, because he doesn't always get them, and they certainly don't get him. So there's great back and forth there too.
Yeah, and this group was not a homogeneous group. I mean, we always think that the apostles, especially if you Jesus Christ Superstar, they're all kind of sitting there, loving each other and being wonderful, and they could never fight with each other. Oh no, every one of these people is totally different, and they have to fit into this group, and it's interesting.
I love the fact that he has a dog that he's befriended.
Because that's it. And only a dog would love him. I mean, that's like, he tries to go home one time and he realizes I can't go in there, so he ends up just sitting with his dog.
Well, and the fact that dogs were rejected, they people didn't have dogs as pets back then. The dogs were, in the towns, were rejected as unclean and dirty, necessities at times as watchdogs, but they weren't pets like we think of them today. So the fact that he made a pet of this dog because it was unwanted, like he's unwanted, and that, so that
they needed each other. Yes.
So, and then Peter, let's talk about Peter. Peter is probably the most unlike what I think of when I think of St. Peter. He's a bit of a criminal, he's a scammer. He's, trying to cheat the Romans. He fishes on the Sabbath. He's kind of,
he's a cage fighter.
And in some ways, like he's hot-headed, which we did know from the Bible. He's hot-headed. He kind of leaps into things too quick. As again, we will see, we see in the gospel. But he's also Jesus's biggest champion, and he kind of also wants to protect him. He's like, look, I know you're a little naive about the world, Jesus. I'll be here to fight off the bad guys. I'm the tough guy.
He takes the role of the what's the word I'm looking for? The publicity agent. When he's first giving that talk in that one house, he's going around saying, "You know about this guy?" Like as if he was passing out flyers or something.
Yeah.
And one of the best scenes for Peter. I mean, there's so many. But when Jesus says to Peter, he's like, Peter goes, I know you knew what I was thinking, and he's like, Peter, everyone here knows what you're thinking. You don't have to be God to know. You don't need God's wisdom to know this. And all the apostles are looking at him, nodding their heads like, yeah, we all knew what you were thinking.
Just from the Gospels, I've always felt that Peter was one that wore his heart on his sleeve. That you know who he is. There's no pretense. What you see is what you get. But the criminal part of it, I was surprised. Well, we're going to go down that road. All right, let's see how that works. But then there's his wife.
Yes, I was going to bring her up. She is awesome.
Again, another woman here who is sort of the redemption of this man. She makes him better than he is because he's married to her. And you see that. And there's one point where Jesus says, we're going ahead, but you need to go home. You're married, you have something to deal with at home. And it's his mother-in-law. And we know later on that's going to figure into something.
Well,
but
in the episode 8, that comes to a resolution. Yeah. So,
but you're also seeing the other part of him because we know he was married. He's the only one we know that was married in the Gospels. So, but I like her because she is that woman. She's that woman who stands by her man.
There is a great moment in the episode 8 where they're about to go off on their apostolic, their journey, and this is where we have the healing of Peter's mother-in-law, and Jesus pulls her aside. Her name is Eden, and he pulls her aside after he sends Peter off to do something, and he talks to her. He's like, "Look, you are one flesh, you and Peter, and he's coming with me, but you have a role to play too. Even though you're staying here, you are vital." And he kind of talks to her like as a person, as an important person, and explains like you are like, because she's going, eventually Peter's going to Rome, we know, in history, and she's presumably, unless she passes away young, we don't know anything about Jesus' wife. Except that he had
Peter's
one.
wife.
Peter's
wife.
wife.
Jesus didn't have a wife.
Sorry, please forgive me.
Watch it.
Let's edit that out. We don't know anything about. Yeah. Well, that'll come out in post. We don't know anything about Peter's wife other than that she existed, but she has a role to play in Peter's life. And like you said, Joanne, our spouses make us better people. My wife makes me better. Hopefully, I make her better. And in this, we see that illustrated how she makes Peter a better person, and Jesus recognizes that, and I love that he draws that out in that scene.
We don't even know if she was alive. I mean, she's never in the Bible,
right?
The mother-in-law is, but we don't know that Peter was still married. It's certainly conceivable that she, died young in those times. But she is similar to Mary Magdalene, but obviously, in her own way. The way the men can find their way to Jesus, and it's scriptural. When a good wife and a good mother is described in the Old Testament Psalms, it's like this is someone who will help you to see Jesus, and and find God, and that's similar to the way Adam first saw Eve. There's the one, and she's the crowning jewel of creation, and it's really neat, and it shows us the role of women for God and how vitally important it is. And if we and Joanne, you could obviously speak to this better than me, but when we try to make the role of women the role of men, we lose a vital part of what God's plan was.
Yeah, and as a woman, I can say it's very hard for those of you who know Proverbs. It's very hard to live up to the Proverbs 31 woman. She is just too perfect in every way. But the women have a role in the kingdom, and it's not the man's role. It's a different role unto ourselves. And to see Jesus, this character, Jesus, bringing this out of all the women that he encounters, even if it's somebody's, even if they're just in his group and they're asking him questions and he looks at them and he calls them by name. And that would never have been done in first century Judea, only because women were less than children, I think, or women and children were in the same boat. They were to be seen and not heard and stuffed in a corner. But there was one that impressed me in that scene where they're all at Zebedee's house. There's a woman standing at the door and she's pregnant, and obviously so, and it was just a really, again, another cross section of everybody is invited to listen, to get the message, to be in the kingdom.
Even in the children's scene, it's a little girl that first brings everybody to Jesus. This isn't a mistake that they're doing this. And the role of women isn't something that can be done without. If you take the women out of the story, that the way they're presenting it, nothing works.
Right.
You take Mary Magdalene, you take that little girl, you take the Blessed Mother, you take them out of it, as we know, doesn't work.
And I do think it's interesting that the person who leads the group that brings the paralytic to be healed by lowering him through the roof is another woman that Jesus encountered. So speaking of important women, we have to speak about the most important woman, and that's Mary, his mother, which we have this great episode, which is all about the wedding feast at Cana. And it starts with a flashback, and there are lots of flashbacks to different eras, either into this flashback is to earlier in Jesus' life, but other flashbacks are to older parts of the Bible. And but this one is flashback to the finding of Jesus in the temple. So we have Mary and Joseph who out of their minds looking for Jesus in the streets of Jerusalem, 12-year-old Jesus, and they find it. That's how the episode begins. Don't you know you would find me in my Father's house? I just love that part. And then we have Jesus and Mary, and to see that first encounter between Jesus and Mary when he comes to the house in Cana, and the joy, the love in that, like he adores her and she adores him, and it was so beautiful. It was one of the moments when I teared up a little, and it was just so moving. And it was like, what a great moment. Like, it's not the traditional, the Mary, again, the ethereal Mary, the removed Mary, the nearly divine Mary. She's not wearing a blue veil, which would be it would be an anachronism, because she wouldn't have been wearing a blue veil then, but necessarily, maybe. But don't quote me on that. But she's wearing very first century seeming, just regular clothing of a woman from Nazareth whose husband was a carpenter. She just seemed very down to earth, but loving. She's at this wedding. She's doing everything she can to help prepare for the wedding. I forget what was the connection with her and the mother of the groom.
They were obviously just friends. They were friends.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is, I know some people, I had some people complain about the way Mary's depicted, and from Catholics, and I was just like, really? Especially coming from, I know they had a priest, as part of their advisory staff, but this is coming from, evangelicals and Christians, mostly, and they did a great job. They took what they did with that beginning scene, with the flashback to the finding in the temple, is Jesus said, where else would you expect to find me? And Mary's, I don't remember actually how she said it, but it was, okay, Jesus, but not yet. Like, this is, you're 12 and I get it, but give me a break.
I'm not ready
let us
for
raise
this.
you first,
Yeah.
And Jesus said, if not now, when? And they set that all up for literally showing us that Mary was the one who said when.
Yes.
She's the one who said now. And Jesus wasn't, I mean, obviously he's aware, he's divine, but he isn't depicted as I'm waiting for Mary to come up to me. He just comes up and says that. He's like, oh, really? He's about to go dancing with Andrew, who apparently can't dance, which is another great part of that episode. But and Mary is also introduced by Jesus before they get to her as I think it was like the most powerful woman I know. I mean, he was like, this is the most formidable woman I know. And they're like, who are you talking about? He goes, my mother. and it was great. I mean, Jesus was like, there's one woman that, has me, who's, who is above, he places her on a pedestal. It's his mom. It was great. And it was very Catholic. At least
so.
The way I took it, it was very Catholic.
As Catholic as you can expect an evangelical production to be.
Exactly.
Yeah, and maybe even more
and more
in
so.
Some ways. I could see how what they were doing, but yeah, I was not like disappointed. They had a lot of respect for her.
Right. I do like that, by the way, that at the wedding at Cana, Thomas, the apostle, doubting Thomas, is the wine caterer who's tasked with filling up the washing jugs with the waters for Jesus to turn into the wine, and doubting the whole time. I just loved that they made that connection.
They did a similar thing with the Jesus of Nazareth. The Thomas apostle was like the doubter kind of skeptic the whole way through. So
poor Thomas.
It was neat. Forever. As a priest that I used to work for, once said in a homily, he missed one staff meeting, and forever after that, he's always the doubter. Any one of those 12 could have not been there that one Sunday and come back later and said, yeah, I'm not buying this until I see it. It just happened to be him.
But so I want to kind of wrap things up relatively quickly. Just want to mention the Romans were the Praetor Quintus. Totally reminds me of John Delancey. I looked him up, in fact, to see if he was like John Delancey's son. John Delancey is the actor who played Q on Star Trek and a bunch of other things.
Oh my God.
He is a Q type person.
Totally. When you said that, I'm like, is John Delancey Q? Because that's exactly who he reminded me of.
Yes. Yeah.
You almost expected him to just like flash into existence and say, hey, exactly like him.
You remind me of Picard. No, and then and the
Data.
It's interesting that the Romans, while all of the actors who play Jewish characters all have an accent, which is not a natural accent. They're playing an accent. But the Romans all have American accents. I don't know if you noticed that. It's very interesting they played it that way to really make that separation clear. Except for, no, I think Eric Avari is also doing an accent. He's got a bit of an accent to begin with. So then there are the miracles. I guess we kind of talked about those, but the miracles that Jesus performs at different times. The flashbacks I mentioned. We see a flashback of Jacob's well. That's in the last episode with where we end up with the woman
at the well.
The woman at the well, which is
excellent episode. Yeah,
excellent. Don't miss that. But also we see an ancient form of the Sabbath meal. That we get, and we get a couple of those flashbacks, the ones. But I want to talk about the future of this series. If they're planning to do this 7 seasons.
I just want to, before we move ahead, real quick. Never before had I seen miracles done by Jesus the way they did him here, in the sense that when he cured a leper, they used CGI to show the leprosy disappearing. So it wasn't like kind of like, well, he had leprosy and now he doesn't. Like they were showing the apostles and that woman who brought the paralytic later on, watching this man's leprosy disappear. So it was a very powerful scene where he really does do things that are supernatural. Yeah, and I like that.
Well, what I think they're also doing is they're not just showing the miracle, but they're showing the reactions to the miracle, how people are interpreting what they're experiencing. Because usually when you see it on the movies, it's just the big spectacular CGI or the big, build up to, and there's the miracle. This is like the miracle is there and you're watching everybody watch it.
Yeah, once again, it's the chosen. It's their point of view that we're getting, and it's good.
So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the future of this. We don't know much about the future, except it's going to be the rest of the Gospels. And as I watch this, there's a little thing in the back of my head. We got 7 seasons to go, which is great. But I'm thinking, I don't know if I'll be able to watch this Jesus go through the passion and the crucifixion, because like we said, he's so relatable. He's so good. What do you think?
That's what we need. we need to be invested in him. I don't want to say just as a character, but we need to be invested in what's going to happen here, because that's what Christians should be. They should be invested in what has happened so that they can go forth and tell the story. So we need to be totally invested.
I think that so far, and I said this when we did the podcast on the Passion, so far they are showing us this art form as a true art form, where similar to how we can look at Da Vinci or Michelangelo and be inspired by the divine and be lifted up, is like is how we the church defines art, sacred art, is something that lifts you up. This is doing it a lot, and so you can legitimately say that if you have an experience of feeling closer or being drawn to the divine when you watch this, that's a real thing that used to be done with painting and sculptures and still is, and now it can be done with cinema, TV, and it's real.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of being a little tongue-in-cheek when I said that, like, I'm not sure I can watch this, because I think that's a really good point, because one of the things I think that what made The Passion successful, that I think this show could make successful if it continues the way it does, is it can become routine for us to experience the crucifixion every year, through Lent, on to Good Friday, and Easter. Here comes Easter's resurrection, and it kind of becomes routine. We say the words on Palm Sunday and Good Friday, crucify him, crucify him, and it just, when you do it enough, it becomes the same thing. But what these do is they kind of break us out of that. That's one of the things that the Passion of Christ did for me, and that's what I think this show could do for me, is it to break me out of the routine of hearing the same Gospels over and over again, representing it in a new way that makes me appreciate it all the more, so that when we come to the crucifixion, I'm going to be thinking of this Jesus who's relatable, who's such a good guy. How could anyone want to crucify him?
Yes.
He's so good, so holy, so doing such good for people. And that's, I think, if anything, if this show does anything, that will be its great contribution.
Yeah, and we don't have to have the abstract thought of Jesus in our heads. And we do have our personal relationship, but sometimes we need help. We're, as Catholics, we need pictures. We take all the physical things that God gives us to help us, including the sacraments, to help us relate. And now we can take this, and some of when you talk about the future, think about this. We haven't met Judas yet. How are they going to do him? What is his personality going to be like? That's going to be very interesting. Is he going to be played as a good guy? How are they going to have Hayden Christensen do it and have him try it again? I don't know. I mean, it's that'll be an interesting choice. And how about watching Jesus see his apostles abandon him? How about watching these guys? We're going to watch them be this ensemble and this together.
And Peter deny
and watch
him.
them run away, and Peter deny him, and all the other ones leave him in the garden. And I mean, it's going to be gut wrenching.
I'm waiting for. So if Hayden Christensen does play Judas, I want to have him yell at him, "You were the chosen one." I'm sorry, I had to do that. But I think of like all of the miracles that we get coming too. We get the feeding of the 5,000. We get the raising of Lazarus, and the whole thing with Martha and Mary. The walking on water.
Yeah, I want to see Martha and Mary. There's
what are those cats? Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. Talk about like. And also it's not like they pulled out. Well, how many seasons do you want to do? I don't know, 8. They obviously have this mapped out.
They have a plan.
Like, this is how we're going to do it. And so it's at least an idea of moving forward. And obviously, if you watch some of the YouTube videos, you'll see the before and afters with the producer, and get to know his personality and see how honest and true he comes across to me as someone who truly is doing this as a calling and not, he's not trying to make money or pull the wool over eyes or anything like that. You can really get the idea that this is totally fascinating to him too. Like, he's like, wow, I can't believe we got $10 million. We're going to be able to do this whole thing. Another Star Wars analogy, Lucas is like, well, I'll try to make the whole movie once, but I mean, I'd really like to make 3, and it worked, and he made 3. So This is working, and he can maybe do all 8 seasons and get us to those, those scenes we fear seeing, at the end,
right,
that is going to be hard to watch. Just, keep praying for this series to keep it up.
I think that's a good place to bring this to a close. I do just want to finish by saying I'm going to be watching this over again. I'm trying to get my wife to watch it. I want my daughter to watch it. I think I'm going to watch it again because it's just, there's more to experience.
I'll be doing studies on it in the new parish I'm working at in Columbus, Ohio, pretty soon. What a great tool this is for faith formation. I'm already thinking of it. and guarantee you there'll be books, study materials, guides, and things written that you can use. They'll be out there for sure. All right, let's. So as we wrap it up, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of movies and TV shows, including this time Lenora G, Dawn C, Andrew W, Chris M, and Robert W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows we do at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What do you think of The Chosen? We'd love to hear what you think and how it's affected you, or whether you think how this compares to other depictions of Jesus you've seen. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page, or send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Until next time, Joanne Mercier, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of The Chosen. Thanks, John. Mike Denz, thank you as well. And I encourage everybody, if you'd like a part 2, if I may be so bold, send us emails and comments about what we missed that we didn't talk about, and maybe we'll do another one. Maybe we will. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on StarQuest.